Earlier this week, Jennifer, whom you were introduced to just a little while ago, we were talking about the power of choice. And, you know, we really felt that it might be appropriate to have her included in this talk, this message today. So wanted to invite her up to just say some things about the power of choice. Shall we welcome her?
Good morning, everybody. Well, Bruce and I often discuss the topic of his Sunday talk during the week. And in this new ministry, we've set an intention for me to take part and contribute on various levels. And today feels like a wonderful day to get started and spend a little time with you up here. So the talk title today is The Power of Choice. The power of choice. Probably one of the most important faculties of mind that we humans are given. The power of choice can be a double-edged sword, though, can it? It has the power to support or weaken, compel or restrain, enhance or desecrate, uplift or condemn, nourish or destroy. Pretty powerful stuff we human beings have at our disposal. Well, everyone in this room used that power hundreds of times this morning, ever since you opened your eyes, from the choice to get out of bed to where you would sit in this room when you walked in. And every one of those choices has shaped your world and the environment in which you interact. There's probably not a person in this room who cannot recall at least one past choice that didn't turn out so well. I know that I can. More than one. Well, the art of refining our power of choice is critical to the quality of our lives on almost every level. And with maturity, if we've learned anything through trial and error in life, our best choices serve to support and sustain us. They serve to support and sustain us. I'd like to share a personal story with you about my own journey of self-discovery, which led to a greater understanding about the power of choice in my life. About 35 years ago, I was the mother of two small children going through a very difficult divorce and realizing the full impact of the choices I had made at a very, very young and very naive stage in my life. It was a huge aha moment for me to realize one day, standing in my kitchen, that love was not enough. That loving someone was no longer going to be the sole criteria for becoming involved with or staying with them. That despite the optimism of my marriage vows of for better or worse, and despite the role models of a loving marriage that my parents presented to me and to my brothers, that love relationships can sometimes be very unhealthy. Well, that realization would never have come to me at age 24 had I not simultaneously learned that loving myself meant setting some criteria and healthy boundaries in relationship. I was now aware of what the popular relationship writers at that time were calling red flags and deal breakers. Remember those? I now had the tools to leave the love is blind fog behind and make choices to uphold and support not only my life, but the lives of my children as well. Well, speaking of red flags, my best friend surprised me at that time with a very funny bouquet. She had gone to a hardware store and she bought a handful of those little plastic flags on metal sticks that workmen stick in the ground to mark electrical and gas lines so you don't go digging in the wrong place. Well, it was a very funny and silly but protective reminder from a dear friend to be vigilant when it comes to matters of the heart as well as open. And I grew up a lot, and I learned a lot about making good choices for myself. So, the power of choice. As the years have passed, I've matured even further, and I can see that the power of choice ties into so many things. The law of attraction, the law of cause and effect, the law of karma. I see how much we all want to heal our lives by making empowered choices and learning to love ourselves. Several years ago, Bruce and I attended a seminar at Unity Village presented by Byron Katie. Many of you may be familiar with her. She's one of my favorite New Thought teachers. We watched her skillfully delve into what she calls the work. She used volunteers from the audience who were feeling stuck in some kind of a pattern or self-concept. But the bottom line question she ultimately asked everyone with their issue was, well, she had them ask themselves, actually. It was, who would I be without that thought? Who would I be without that thought, that vendetta, that drama, that tragedy, that unkind inner critic? Fill in the blanks. Who would I be without that thought? And as each volunteer addressed this profound question within the context of their issue, many of which had been a burden on them for years, as the layers of victimhood and limitation were peeled away by the simple power of choice to see themselves and others differently, with tears of release and sometimes with laughter, they unshackled themselves from layers of grief, rage, recrimination, revenge, judgment, victimhood, and guilt. The course of their lives were changed forever by changing their mind and imagining another paradigm for themselves. They had set themselves free through the power of choice. Well, as Bruce speaks next, and we delve more deeply into this topic today, may we all choose to see our past choices with forgiveness and with compassion, and open ourselves to step even further into our own healing power. Thank you.
Thanks, honey. Last week, when I was down in the fellowship hall and I was speaking with one of the attendees or congregants here, she said something very important, at least to me. She said, we come into this life and are destined to choose. And that began a whole inquiry into the power of choice. And I remember at the time with that my wife was speaking about Byron Katie, people would come up on the stage and sit with her, and they would be describing what they called a bondage of thoughts or beliefs, and she would do the work, asking them if it was true and how they felt when they had that thought and what they would be without that thought. And you could see a subtle shift in people, the lightening of the load of what they were carrying around. And I just so got it that we all, through the power of choice, have this dynamic within our lives of bondage or freedom. And we all come in with a destiny to choose. And I was thinking about what came in consciousness was the angelic kingdom. And you know, I was talking with a friend yesterday. I was having a session with him, and he writes a great deal and feels the presence of the angelic kingdom. And I said, Thomas, his name is Thomas, it's my impression through all my reading throughout the years that angels don't choose. They are simply emissaries and embodiments of a certain quality of God, and that is their job, their function, to promote the wholeness of what it is that we are, even though we forget. We have this veil of forgetfulness, but they are on the other side of the veil, and they're holding space for us in terms of our own wholeness. They're emissaries. They are agents of the divine idea that God holds for us in consciousness. And in Unity, Charles Fillmore really relegated angels to inspired thoughts. He always just called them the transmission from superconscious mind to conscious mind. But because he didn't really want to go outside of the realm of personal consciousness and development, but it is a reality that this evolution of beings are real. And they are distinct from us. In my inquiry with Thomas and in other books, they are just holding a space for us, for our wholeness. And that the human kingdom is a distinct evolution of unfoldment from the angelic host. We have this power to choose. It is a formative power. As Charles Fillmore would say in his writings, it is the formative power of mind. And it is really a double-edged sword in a way, because we have the power to choose to claim our divine destiny or to deny it and be in resistance to it because of our own choices and our own beliefs about who we think we are. And that this work, as well as what Byron Katie was up to, was to reframe what it is that we think that we are, so that we can accept our divine inheritance that is the plan, the divine plan that Spirit has for each one of us. So that's really a good concept, and I feel it is a reality, but I wanted to bring it home into a practical vein. And so I want to give you a life experience that I had just this past week. And I was practicing the presence of God in traffic, going from my home to here, which I do 4 or 5 days a week. And as you know, traffic is traffic here, right? And I had my radio on to CBC, Canadian Broadcast Company. It was great, great station. And the interviewer was interviewing Gloria Gaynor. I don't know if any of you remember her. A lot of people do. Great. So she was kind of a disco queen back in the 70s, right? And she didn't write the song, but she said that when she went into the studio, that the writer of the song said, "You're the person that this song has been waiting for. The song, I Will Survive." And I remember they played the song, and actually I wanted to have, it crossed my mind to have a CD burned and that we could play it in here today. But then I thought, well, I don't know about the culture too much yet and whether or not that would go over. People might be kind of shaking their heads a little bit and saying, what is this guy up to? Playing disco on Sunday morning. But then I thought, well, maybe some other time. When we get to know each other a little bit better, we can revisit that. But I remember Gloria Gaynor saying that for over 40 years, she has traveled the world and performed that song. She also professed a very strong faith in God. And I was inspired by her recounting of how that song really ignited her career. She said she's gone to so many countries all over the world, and I thought to myself, wow, those lyrics of which I have today, and I want to share a few of them with you, not the whole song, but that song is very poignant for the human family. I will survive. It's talking about a relationship that goes bad and, some of that kind of feeling. But what tone is that creating within our listening hearts? I will survive. That's a choice. You and I make a choice. And I want to share with you something that's pretty personal. Yesterday morning, I got a call from my niece that said that my mother, who is 90, fell and broke one of the bones in her back, and she's in the hospital today. And I had a choice. Am I going to allow that to impact me, to affect how I want to show up here today? I don't know exactly how she is at this moment, probably in a lot of pain. And so that image, that thought image, and that emotional feeling pulls at me. But at the same time, I made a choice. I'm here. I'm here to be of service to you. That's my choice. And I remember a couple of weeks ago sitting or lying in bed about 3 a.m. or so and woke up to a feeling of a lot of tension in my body. And I was just like, what is this all about? And I was holding on to the life that I had before in Arizona, the people I knew, the places I would go to, the red rocks, the wonderful land and all that. And this was a couple of weeks ago, and I've come a ways around embracing life here. But at that point, I was just like very tense. And I was laying in bed, and I had this still small voice that said to me, let go. Let go. And I made a choice to let go. And I kept using that as a mantra almost, let go, as things would come up in my consciousness. And they were really, to be quite honest, they were fears about being accepted here, whether or not we would have a fit together, whether or not this would go all right. And my little mind, my little Bruce mind, was just like, holy cow, maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew. But it's a day-to-day choice. It's a day-to-day, moment-to-moment. Really, it's about an identity of what it is that we choose. And if you look at this teaching, these teachings, and we call them the Christ teachings, but just as it says here, it embraces all religions. This isn't just about a Christian point of view. It is a universal point of view, and it is a choice point within each human being's life. On a moment-to-moment level, What are we going to choose? And this is like so important. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement, called it the atom-smashing power of mind. That's how much power we have in our choice. We can choose to reframe anything that comes at us in this life if we simply remember who it is that we are as divine beings, as spiritual beings. That's what Gloria Gaynor did. And that's why for so many years that song has been an anthem, really. And I want to just share with you a few of the lyrics that because they're very, very relatable. She said, "At first, I was afraid. I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. It took all my strength. I had not to fall apart. Kept trying hard to mend the pieces of my broken heart. And I spent, so many nights just feeling sorry for myself. I used to cry, but now I hold my head up high. Oh no, not I will survive. Oh, as long as I know how to love, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live, and I've got all my love to give. I will survive. I will survive." It was a choice. In spite of loss, in spite of challenge, it is a choice every day of our lives. And the Christ teachings, or the universal teachings of truth, are not only about surviving, they're about thriving. They're about choosing a life that is triumphant. And when I sit within my own quiet temple of self, and I'm dealing with my own internal dialogue as you do, your own voice in the head that questions whether or not it's all going to be okay, I listen to that which is within me, that is the actual self, the witness, the spirit, the eternal being that you and I actually are. That is the promise of these teachings. We will survive. We will thrive if we allow it to be. And I was focusing on the teachings, and in this instance, and believe me, I will resource other teachings, East and West, Indigenous, as they call it in Canada, First Nation. I love that, First Nation. But from here, in the Judeo-Christian teachings from the book of Joshua, choose this day whom you will serve. As for me, I will serve the Lord. And what is the Lord to you? Is it God, Jesus, or is it something more intimate? I don't deny it's God or Jesus in terms of this language, even though in Joshua it was before Jesus' time. But the Lord can very well be your own higher self. Choose this day whom you will serve. As for me, I will serve my own inner voice. I will serve my own higher self. I will serve the divinity within me, even though I'm stuck in traffic. I will choose to let go. And it's very fascinating to me, this practicing the presence of God. I remember being in the car and being in traffic and making my way on 41st Street to get here, and I just kept saying, let go, let go, let go. And it was fascinating because my field cleared. It's not like in the movie Bruce Almighty where the cars got out of the way. I'm not talking about that. That would be cool, but it'd also be kind of selfish, I think. But remember that movie? It's funny because in my first church they called me Bruce Almighty because that's when that movie kind of came out then. But anyway, don't want to go off on that tangent. But I recognize that this work is an inside job. It's an inside process. And as I just kept saying, let go, let go, let go, my attachments to frustration or, whatever it was as I was making my way here, they dissipated and I started to look out the windows and start to see things that I wasn't seeing before because of my tunnel vision of, I got to get there, hurry up. It's just like, let go, let go, let go. So the power of choice in your life right now, you're up against, I'm sure, some choices that are very, very important to your moving along. And most of the time, choice is about maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. But it goes deeper than that. To really have the pleasure of God, to live a God-filled spiritual life, is to choose once again whom you will serve. Are we serving our own essential nature, or are we serving the images and the patterns of the world, which are really the patterns of the mind? So I would invite all of us. And today, after the service, when we meet downstairs, so many people in this room are volunteers for this beautiful place, this beautiful spiritual community. And no doubt, everyone says, well, who am I going to serve today? My own self exclusively, or am I going to extend my heart and give and serve in this beautiful place? I've often been told, my mother told me this at one time. She says, spiritual community is not a sit-down dinner. It's a potluck. Everybody brings something to the party. So for us to thrive and to grow and to expand, and for people that are coming in here feeling the presence of Spirit and being welcomed and loved and cherished for who it is that we are, we have to open our hearts and choose this day whom we will serve. And to behold the beauty of each human being in this room. Because we're all going through stuff, but we can choose to see the good. We can choose to have this place be one of just perpetual learning and joy and good. It's up to us. It's up to each one of us. This day, I choose to serve the Lord. How about you? Thank you very much.